speaker today, Sean Tierney from Grid 7. I first met him at Million Cups of Coffee. He spoke about his organization, which was called Charity Makeover. And it was sort of a barn-raising organization where they would have a bunch of volunteers, like people in this room would contact one of the 3,000 plus nonprofits here in Orange County and help them with their business plan, their marketing plan, their mission statement, their website, just everything, help them with the resources that they necessarily didn't have or couldn't afford, especially with ones that were 100% volunteer. That was where I first met him. We started talking about his company, Grid 7, and the excellent marketing message he has. I'll tell you this, when he first committed to come speak for us, he was living here in Orange County. Economics forced him to move back to Arizona, and on his own, he decided to honor the commitment and pay for his ticket to fly out here just for this event. So I wanted to highlight that. Let's give him a big round of applause. Everybody.
Yeah, so when Ruben asked me to talk, I was actually living here, and things changed, and I'm happy to be back. Love Orange County, jealous because of the weather. It's very hot where I live. So hopefully I calibrated this talk right. I respect everyone's time, and I want to give you guys as much value as possible in the time that we have together. Let's do a quick show of hands before we get started, just so I get a read on you guys. So how many people perform a marketing function for whatever organization you play? So basically everyone. How many people will work for themselves? And how many people work for someone else? Okay, about half and half. And how many people have a CRM in their business that they use? Customer relationship management. Okay, about a third. And keep your hands up if that CRM has some function of marketing automation built in it. If you know it. Okay, and then last question, keep your hands up if you use that marketing automation function. So that's really what we're hoping to cover today. So I gear this talk for companies that have revenue, that have product market fit. If you're pre-product market fit, this would not be, you shouldn't be worried about growth and scaling. But it sounds like everyone in here has a company that meets both these criteria and that has CRM and automation. But the thing that kind of unites us is that you're plateaued or you're blocked in some way. Maybe you've tried to put it in action, or you've got this thing and you don't know how to use it. This phrase that I hear is, I feel like I bought the Ferrari and it's parked in the garage. You know, we've got this sophisticated machinery, it's a couple people nodding. We've got this sophisticated thing that I feel like I should be using and I don't know how to do it. So if that sounds like you, you're in the right spot. About me, this is, I just have a very weird and winding background. Everything above the line are the companies that I worked for in the past as a computer programmer, and then everything below the line are the companies that I started. We took a 40-foot city bus and turned it into a mobile nightclub. We did a consulting agency that did commerce and web applications. This is actually a 9-year-old company that's still around today. We grew it to be the largest provider of virtual appliances for Amazon, VMware, and Parallels. Short Sale PDA was a real estate play during 2009 when there were short sales going on. This was a very brief startup we did where we wrote essentially Google Docs for audio. We made it so musicians could collaborate remotely with nothing more than a web browser, could record songs with each other online. Grid 7 is essentially like the shell company that I use to do a lot of different stuff today. This was, we did automation accelerators where we come together and kind of like what Ruben was saying, what we did with Charity Makeover, only for-profit for companies. Artilage, we helped artists basically implement sales and marketing automation. And then currently the thing that I'm working on, Survival School PD, we're trying to inoculate a population against crime and disaster, basically through create kind of the gateway drug online that will get people to go and take self-defense courses and survival training. So that's a little bit about me. Again, very rambling and weird background, but entrepreneurship is the thing that's kind of the common thread through all that. So my goals in this talk today, and I hope it stays conversational. You guys feel free to interrupt me with questions as they come up. I'm happy to answer whatever I can. I've broken it into 4 parts. I want to communicate, like if you take nothing else, there's 5 what I would call crown jewels that if you do these 5 things right, that kind of nothing else matters. This is like the 80-20 of this space. If you do this little bit of stuff right, you're gonna knock it out of the park. Ruben said, I asked Ruben, I said, what's the audience and what do they want to learn? He said they're marketers and they love tools. So So I kind of came up with this idea. We'll do a tool and tactics bonanza, I'm calling it. This is going to be an absolute, it's a whirlwind tour of like every stage of the customer life cycle, 5 to 20 tools that you can use to get more done in each thing. So you don't need to like scribble notes. Like I would almost prefer that you didn't worry about notes and like just absorb in the moment and really grok the concepts, because I'm going to give you these slides afterwards and it's got links and everything. So you don't have to furiously write stuff down. The third thing we're going to talk about is something I came up with called the airlocks pattern. And this is, I call it a pattern because it's truly a design pattern. It's not limited to one specific use case. I will show you how we use it to work with outsourced labor outside your organization. But this is a concept that can be applied in a lot of different aspects of your business. And then lastly, this is a technique. The most common stumbling block that I see in people getting started with using their marketing automation is they don't know, they have the ideas, everything is in their head, and they say, oh, if only I could make it so it automatically remind people to show up at this appointment and then contact them if they didn't and do this, X, Y, Z. They've got all the ideas in their head, but it's translating it into reality that is the stumbling block. That's where people get hung up. So I have a technique here that is, it's the best thing I've found for translating what's in your head to getting it into reality. And as we'll see, one of the crown jewels is just get something real. Like having the best ideas in your head, it's worth it to have one crappy idea implemented in real life, because that's actually going to do something for you. Okay, so we're going to cover a ton of ground right now. Again, interrupt me, try not to take notes, try to just absorb in the moment, think about these concepts, and we'll get started here. Okay, so that being said, here are the 5 crown jewels. All right. First concept, this big scary word, aggregation of marginal gains. This is actually a term that comes from cycling, and it's the idea that when you rise to the level of being a competitive Olympic athlete in cycling, you're worried about shaving like milliseconds off your times. And you do that by making small fixes, like reducing slightly the surface area of the wheels on the road, getting a slightly more aerodynamic helmet, using a little bit better synthetic grease on your axles. And all these things compound to give you a net effect of something huge in the end. So the same concept here in business, I'm going to walk you through a set of numbers. And these should be realistic numbers. We'll just go through this real quick. So these are the 7 phases of, as people engage with your company over time, they all go through these same phases. So they move from not knowing about you at all to being attracted to whatever it is you have, traffic to your website more than likely, to being a lead for you, to then being a qualified prospect, to becoming a customer, to being a happy customer, to buying everything you have, and then to telling all their friends about you. Right? So this is kind of this increasing continuum of engagement that they call this the customer life cycle. So let's talk through just a set of numbers here that should be hopefully realistic. So let's say you get 1,000 visitors to your website, 1,000 unique monthly unique visitors. You're able to capture 5% of those, which translates to 50 leads. Of those, half of them are qualified, so you end up with 25 qualified prospects. Of those, you're able to close a quarter of them, resulting in 6 sales, half of which you turn into super fans because you just blew their socks off and so they love you. A third of which you upsell, so you result in 2 upsells. And then of the super fans, on average, they refer 3 of their friends to you. So that translates to 9 referrals. So is that a believable set of numbers? That's not ultra hard to believe, right? Okay, let me show you this concept of marginal gains. Specifically, watch what happens to these 2 numbers when we have just an incremental improvement across each one of these areas. So is it plausible that we could get 200 more visitors a month? Could we double our capture rate with the appropriate lead magnet? Could we get 10% better qualification? Like all these things, we're just talking about little marginal improvements, but look what it did to the sales. You went from 6 to 24 sales, and you went from 9 to 108 referrals. And those are hopefully believable, we're talking about making these minor incremental improvements to the process, but it's a matter of consciously focusing on the different phases here. So you're talking about 4x return on sales and a 10x return on your referrals, right? So that is the concept of aggregation of marginal gains. It was first taught to me by this guy. I wanted to give him a hat tip. This is my friend Gareth Everson. He's in the UK, but it's a simple concept, but calling it to your attention and being very conscious of it is the key to realize that this exists. Okay, second crown jewel, this concept of scaling personal attention. This is, I don't know, it's a Target or a Walmart, it's a big box store, right? Think about what kind of shopping experience you prefer. Is it this? Or is it the boutique down the road with the clerk who knows your name, knows your shirt size, gets to know your situation, knows your taste? So right now, I'm betting that your website has this feel to it, right? It's a faceless, it's a static brochure out there that fields requests, and everyone gets treated the same. The goal is to move your communications to be more like a boutique experience. Now, the conundrum here is, if you're talking about operating at scale, how with 1,000 monthly visitors do you have a website that then becomes personalized like that and has this feel to it? And this is what scaling personal attention is all about. It's taking this one-to-one, think Amazon, the way that once you interact with Amazon, now it understands your preferences and you start getting served stuff that's very specific to what you do. So the trick to this is in doing it at that scale, and that is what marketing automation helps you do. The guy who kind of came up with this philosophy, Jermaine Griggs, you should get to know this guy's name. He is an absolute, does anyone know him by any chance, or have heard his name? Okay, he is like a shining star in this realm. In my opinion, he does this better than anyone, and he has got a whole methodology for how to approach this idea of scaling your personal attention. It's that idea of let's deliver a mom and pop experience at scale. Yeah?
What's his name again?
Jermaine Griggs. Yeah, and I'll have, actually as a part of this, as we get further into this, I'll actually give you the opportunity, I will send you this podcast on audio. You can actually send it to your phone. You just text it and you get it. Okay, third concept, this idea, and this is something that Jermaine talks about too, 360 messaging. And I don't know about you guys, but like this is how my inbox feels on Monday morning. And I'm serious, this is my inbox. This is my actual inbox from this Monday morning. Right? And I even have the filter set up in Google, the Gmail, where it's like promo filter, so it weeds out most of the stuff. This is what I come to on Monday morning. So it just feels vulture-y. And this is why, you guys, if you rely on email as the sole mechanism of communicating with your prospects, you're fighting a progressively bloodier battle. I think we can all agree that the email inbox is just going to become diluted in terms of a place where you can reach your customers. So the goal of 360-degree method, oh, actually, let me give you this analogy. Anyone know this guy, Evan Pagan? Okay, he's a marketer, pretty famous for his thing with double your dating, was something that he came up with. The analogy here is, if we can think of the inbox like a club, and you're trying to, get to your prospect there, you don't want to be battling these douchebags. These are the guys, these are the other email marketers that you can be the greatest email marketer in the world, but you're in the same inbox as these guys. And so now you're fighting that, and they're tarnishing your game just by virtue of being around them. So the goal, according to Evan Pagan in this situation, you want to take your prospect and bounce them either to a different part of the club or to a different club entirely. And so the analogy here in email marketing is you want to bounce people out of the email medium as quickly as possible to a different medium where you can have that intimate conversation and get to know people. And so that's not to say spam them from all sides at different channels, but that's to say move them to a different medium that's less bloody where you can have a better conversation. Right? So if you're doing just email marketing right now, you're doing it wrong, basically. There's all these other options. There's apps. There's retargeting, text messaging, phone, YouTube channels, podcasts, webinars, social media. There's all these other ways to interact with people.
Is that a newspaper?
Yeah, I just use that. You'll see why in a minute. You'll see why in a minute. But there's all these other ways you can reach people. You should be surrounding them with a 360 degree of communication. Okay. Yeah, so there's text, retargeting. Everyone know what retargeting is? I heard someone mention it earlier. It's this, when you're out on the New York Times website, but you've been to your site, you'll see you have the ability to serve ads to them anywhere on the internet that supports, that's an advertiser that has a reciprocity agreement. So retargeting is extremely useful. Clean people with physical postcards, you guys. Like, ironically, mailers back in the day got diluted, but now everyone's doing email marketing, so now mailers are actually effective. And you can't do direct mail on everyone. I wouldn't say it's a great technique on people who aren't your customers yet, but in terms of like a loyalty thing where you already have a relationship, This is absolutely something you should be doing. Okay, phone, webinars. So just some of the different options you have for the 360 messaging. So I was actually lucky to meet Jermaine Griggs. This was at a conference in Phoenix. And this is actually one of hearing his podcast was the first time I really understood this stuff. So he's kind of like the godfather to me. This is why I'm a huge fan of this guy. And to give you an example of the 360-degree messaging later, like let you actually experience what this is all about, like I said, I'm going to give you the opportunity to text in, and it will send his podcast, the episode that I'm talking about, to your phone if you want to listen to it. Okay, crown jewel number 4, just ship it. So this sounds so simple in practice and it's so hard to do, but it's this concept that the perfect is enemy of the good, right? Like striving for perfection means you don't ever do anything, and that's horrible. It'd be better to do something halfway there and at least get it out the door. Or this is another quote from a guy I really admire. This is Reid Hoffman, the guy who founded LinkedIn. Says, if you're not completely embarrassed by version 1 of your product, you've waited too long to ship. Right? Because none of us want to be embarrassed, but the reality is you should be embarrassed when you ship. You should have warts on your product that aren't the way you want, but you're getting it out there because you're getting it in customers' hands earlier, and you're learning from that. So this was an accelerator I worked at in Phoenix. This is a guy, he had a laser hair removal clinic, and we worked on his business. And he said, we got 6 months of work done in 3 days. That was his quote. My quote, shipping trumps everything. It was what we walked away. He had all these ideas going into the event, and it was a matter of getting him to just get rid of 90% of it and say, okay, we're going to do these 3 things, but we are going to have them done by the end of this weekend. So shipping trumps everything. All right, last crown jewel, the lean mindset. Does anyone know lean manufacturing? Have you heard that term before? So this is like a talk on its own, so I'm not going to go deep into this, but the essence of it is reducing risk, uncertainty, and waste. And when I say waste, I mean waste in the form of wasted calories, wasted time, wasted energy, wasted money pursuing the wrong thing. The greatest. What's that?
Is that a book of yours?
This is actually a book. I haven't released it yet. It's something that I'm working on. It's unconventional methods for accelerating product market fit. This is not real yet. This is real. This is a talk I did for the San Diego Marketing Automation Group Mastermind. And it was really cool. We blew people's minds in that talk because we actually did, not only did we teach them the concepts, but we then did like a meta exercise where we actually did it to them. And they didn't even realize what was going on. And by the end of it, people said, oh, that's what you're talking about. So I highly recommend, this links to it. If you get the slides, this actually links to that talk. But it's worth the whatever hour it was to go through it. But this is basically, you guys, the greatest gains we can make are not by doing things incrementally better, but by eliminating the stuff that just doesn't matter. So we can focus on what does matter. All right, so to recap those 5 things, we got the aggregation of marginal gains, that cycling analogy of the things compound and add up. Scaling personal attention, don't be like the big box store, try to be like the boutique. 360-degree messaging, you shouldn't try to bounce people out of the email inbox as quickly as possible. Just ship it. And the lean, the de-risk your stuff through the lean principles. So any questions on that stuff? Yeah?
Sean, on the just ship it, are you sacrificing quality?
So there's absolutely a point at which I'm not advocating just throw crap out the window because let's just get something out there, right? That can damage your reputation. And so there is definitely a point at which you have to get it adequate to a point where you're proud of it enough, but you recognize it's still not where it needs to be. But there's like a tipping point at which now the net win, getting it in customers' hands outweighs, the value of that outweighs the downsides of having it not perfect. So at that point, ship. It's a good question.
Because I just dealt with a supplier of mine, and they shipped something to my customer that the colors were all wrong. And they had to redo it, So if you just ship it, you sacrifice the quality. And I've gotten things sent to my customers, I can't believe it ever made it through any sort of quality control.
Sure.
It just got shipped. That was always important.
So that situation, clearly the quality, having it perfect is essential. Anything less than that is going to be a complete failure, and it makes the whole thing worthless. So in that situation, obviously don't ship. I guess what I'm referring to is when you have a marketing campaign and you sit there and you nitpick every last little thing and you never hit send on it.
Okay.
The value of that is 0 because you never hit send.
I didn't realize you're talking a marketing campaign.
Yeah, sorry. So
That's okay.
That's the context here. Go ahead.
In terms of technology, could the analogy for MVP be applied to chip?
Yeah, that's absolutely, so the MVP, what he's talking about is a minimum viable product, and that is a lean concept, so it's very much related.
And Google usually announces a product and they say it's in beta, and they roll it out, and the demand is high because it seems to be a coveted thing, and then it stays in beta for years sometimes. Some of the products we're using are still technically beta in their eyes.
Gmail was beta, I believe, for 7 years before
Yeah.
they took the beta label off of it. Yeah. Any questions on this side? Okay, all right, let's move on. And you'll let me know at time, right, when we have however 10 minutes left? Okay. All right, so put your seatbelt on. This one is just an absolute whirlwind. This is, this is what I think you guys wanted, so a lot of tools. So we're going to go each one of these stages. You saw this chart before. This is the perfect customer life cycle. We're going to work at each one of these 7 stages, and I'm going to just tell you all the tools that there are, that I know, the best ones. So starting with this is traffic acquisition. This is how you get those visitors who don't even know about you yet to come to your website, and to at least get to that point. And I figured the way to kind of do a big infographic, we're just going to use like the tree, the analogy being like go after the lowest hanging fruit first. This is the easiest stuff to get. And then as you move up the tree, you're going up this continuum of cost and time necessary to execute it, but also the defensibility. Once you get higher up there, it's harder for other people to get that fruit. Okay, so Google AdWords, how many people have used Google AdWords? A good number of you, right? This is a fire hose of traffic that you can turn on quickly and control. It's based on search intent, and it's something that you can just very easily turn on and off. And you can learn a lot from it. If you do it, you should be using this tool. This is a free tool. It's called SpyFu. It's actually made by a guy in Arizona, but basically what this lets you do, it's almost like cheating. You can see what your competitors have done in the past and how their campaigns have evolved, and then make inferences from that as to what's working. Because they wouldn't have doubled down on this set of keywords and these ads if they weren't producing revenue for them. And they wouldn't have pruned these other ones away if they were working. So you can kind of make those inferences, and it just basically like eliminates a lot of the trial and error on your part. It lets you start from a better position. So SpyFu, really neat free tool. Facebook ads, this is another pay-per-click thing, very easy to turn on. It's not search intent based, but it is more demographics and psychographics based. It's the interest based on the profile of that person. Twitter, again, another pay-per-click option. It has its situations where it's very relevant. There's something that the city of Phoenix asked us to consult on, and this is actually the first time when I've seen this be a super great fit for them. I would say normally Twitter has kind of been like this weird, like Facebook is more mainstream. It's becoming progressively more mainstream though. So this is something you should get to know, is the Twitter card.
You mean in terms of advertising on Twitter?
Yeah, yeah. It's like back in the day, or even just 3 years ago, I would said the mainstream is not on Twitter. This is like kind of the geeks and the musicians and like that crowd, and that's just not true anymore. It's like the average person is now getting to Twitter.
Hey, Sean, I have a question with the controversy that's been going on with Twitter recently. I think it's going to affect anything. Kurt Schilling and now Ashley Judd over the weekend, where she says she's going to take people to court and have them prosecuted.
I'm not familiar with the controversy. What is it?
Well, Kurt Schilling, they actually went to and had people were using the anonymity of Twitter and making illegal comments to people, basically that they're tracking him down and they're prosecuting.
Yeah.
It happened over the weekend when Ashley Judd made a comment about the Arkansas basketball team was playing dirty, and she's had death threats.
Huh. I saw some headline that Twitter's complying with the authorities and now like releasing names and stuff in those cases, but I don't know anything beyond that.
But as a marketer, do you think that's going to affect anything right now? No?
I don't see that affecting how I do things.
It's going to increase activity.
Yeah, if anything, like scandals tend to draw more attention.
Sean, when you're talking about using Twitter, are you suggesting that it's just a great value add channel? I've been using it for years, but would never pay for it because the pricing is outrageous for Twitter advertising. So
and I would say it's all contextual. Like normally I would agree with you because there aren't good fits, but this project specifically with the city of Phoenix, it's a perfect fit. And it's if people are already on Twitter for whatever it is, like the situation you're talking about, if you can amplify what works already, this is a great way to do that. But it's like none of this stuff is a magic bullet. You got to figure out, like, always just test a bunch of things, see what works, and then double down on what works. StumbleUpon, has anyone played with this? It's a super interesting service. It's basically, think of like a channel clicker. Think of someone sitting there just clicking through channels. It's the equivalent for web pages. There's actually people who sit there and say, stumble, 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 show me stuff that I'm interested in. And it starts to learn their preferences. And you can advertise to these people, and what's neat about it is, instead of serving an ad impression, you're actually getting a visitor to your website. And if you do anything with retargeting, that means that you're also now cooking that person and you can reach them later. So this is definitely something that you should experiment with. It's fairly affordable, and when people thumbs up your page, then it also has a viral coefficient to it. So you get free advertising that you didn't have to pay for. To your point, the organic social media in the back. So these are basically like not even hanging fruit. These are just fruit that fell on the ground that you can pick up because it's free to make these accounts. And so all these things, you should at the very least have an account and have someone occasionally check it. It doesn't do any good to make an account and then not use it, so you gotta at least somewhat monitor it. So those are all free. Geocommerce, are there any realtors in the room? Anyone who does real estate stuff? Or
Not a real estate, but we do advertising for real estate.
okay. Anything where there's hyper-local, proximity-based, anything where like you're trying to advertise to people in a very specific area, like a city block, there's actually the ability now to target by IP address, and they map it all, and they can give you like a geofence, and you can actually advertise to a specific city block display ads. It's pretty interesting.
Are you not a proponent of Yelp?
Yelp is a double-edged sword. I mean, I know Joey has thoughts on Yelp, I'm sure. Yelp, I'm a proponent of what works, so if Yelp works for you, great. Go for it. It's a bit, in my opinion, mafia. Like, you end up kind of getting addicted to it and having to pay for your listing that should be yours, and then, it's not cheap. So I would just say be wary that Yelp, you can spend a lot of money on Yelp and not get your money back. So YouTube, everyone can make a YouTube channel, and this is in all kinds of places. It's on every Apple TV. I mean, there's people can subscribe to your YouTube channel. Like, it's definitely something to experiment with. You can also advertise to clips on YouTube that then serve ads to other people. Blogging, it goes without saying you should start a blog. Whatever it is your business is, this is kind of a longer arc play because it requires a little more work and it's not immediate effect. But the SEO that you build from writing a blog is just incredible. And this is something that pays dividends down the road. Once you've had a year of writing under your belt, you're just going to start to see dividends off that. Okay, this is a little bit more of a gangster technique that we developed, but involves, Mozenda is a tool for scraping online directories, and you can actually scrape contact info and then bring it into Facebook as a custom audience and then serve ads to those folks. And so this is something that's, at some point Facebook will lock this down because I'm quite sure that it wasn't how they intended it to be used, but at least for now this is a gangster technique. So this is something more sophisticated. What we did with Short Salepedia, how we got that service started, we used an open source Q&A system with something called OSQA. We developed this, it's think like Stack Exchange or any of those places where people go to ask question and answer stuff. So we put this in place, we seeded it with the top 20 questions on short sales. We then invited a set of high-end realtors to make some good answers to those questions, and then wired it up using this service to Twitter. So it would actually tweet every time someone asked a question or answered a question. And so we got this nice viral engine built where people started coming in from Twitter because they saw the tweets. They'd then come ask us a question on the site, which would then, of course, tweet that out and bring more people in from Twitter. And so that's what you call a viral loop. So to the extent you can get one of those going, that's an awesome thing. It became an engine that just propelled its way. We got number 4 for the term short sale on Google, which was a very competitive term. So things like that, viral engines. Commission, so Commission Junction and Share a Sale, these are 2 affiliate sites where if you have a product, this is, again, like it may not be relevant to your product, but if you have something that lends itself to being able to offer it under an affiliate program, this is something to explore. podcasts, you guys getting on guest blog posts, like finding other blogs where people have a following already, and you can go do a guest post on there and then link back to yours, is a great way to build an audience. Same thing with being guests on podcasts. I've done this before. It's awesome if you're a good speaker. It's just a great way to get out there and get known. All right, this is a tool, Market Samurai. I've used this. It's a pretty sophisticated tool, but it's awesome if you're doing a lot of AdWord advertising. It helps you find the long tail pockets that nobody else has discovered yet, and then monetize those. And it's got, it's a really neat way that they use filters to determine like the commerciality of the term, the market size, the availability, the competitiveness of it. And you can actually just like kind of flow the words through this filter and find, boom, here are the 5 terms we need to rank for. Super useful tool. SlideShare. You can bet that this presentation itself will at some point, I'll throw it on SlideShare. We'll get some extra visitors to our website through that. It's just a place, if you have any kind of PowerPoints, you should be throwing them out there. We actually see a ton of traffic through that conduit. Prezi is another one. It's its own system. It's like an alternative to PowerPoint. Very powerful presentation system. The same thing. They have visitors to the Prezi site itself, so it actually gets you distribution as well. And then this one is the highest on the tree because it's the hardest to do, but it's also super valuable. Just good old-fashioned partnerships with people in your space, people that have a related industry. Form a partnership. Okay, so that's all traffic acquisition. Any questions on any of that? Cool. All right, so let's go on to the lead capture portion of this. And then I figured the way to do this, I like to think in terms of like the biggest fish to fry. So the biggest fish by far to fry in the lead capture is the quality of your landing page. And this consists of a lot of different things. It's the elements, the design, the copywriting, all these different aspects play into the quality of your landing page. That is where you should focus 80% of your energy if you're having a lead capture problem. What is the offer itself? Have you tuned the offer? Have you tested different offers to your audience and made sure that you have the right one? So there's different services that help you do this. Unbounce is a great one. They've since, I would argue, been leapfrogged by these guys, Lead Pages. If I were going to use, I've used Unbounce for a ton of stuff in the past. At this point, I refer people to Lead Pages. And the reason why is roughly equivalent in terms of features. I'd say maybe slightly better quality on Lead Pages, but they have something that Unbounce never offered and I think is super progressive, and that is the collective intelligence. Because they're SaaS, because they're Lead Pages as a service, they have insight into the conversion numbers across their network. So all their clients, their visitors, how they're converting on their Lead Pages, they aggregate all those reports and they bring it back and they bubble up the best converting Lead Pages. So they actually have insight in it as to what landing pages perform the best, and why would you use something that less than that? So, highly recommend them. This is a great book on the subject. It's probably like arguably the Bible in this space for landing page optimization. This allows you to do A/B testing, Optimizely. It's actually what Obama's campaign used the first time through, and I think they figure they got something like $60 million extra because they were doing an A/B testing. Qualaroo is the little thing at the corner of web pages. If you've ever seen it, asks you a question. It says, did we answer your question on this page? If not, write something. So it's just yet another way to engage people. Octane Monitor is one of those pop-up plugins that we all hate, but guess what? These things are effective. That's why people do it. So if you don't mind the aesthetics of it, it's an effective tool. Olark is an online chat thing. We use it on our sites. This is another exit pop-up. And then Leadformix, again, for people that actually, this is great for people that do B2B sales. Folks, you can get, if people don't leave their email address, so we're at the point at which they visit your website, but they're not ready to offer up their contact info, you can still get their contact info. It's a little bit creepery, but this uses reverse DNS lookup to actually find the IP block from where they came, and it gives you the people at that IP block. So if you're selling to Intel, you can tell that these people from Intel, like someone from this group, looked at your website. Super, super interesting if you're in the B2B space. Okay, so that is lead capture. Prospect nurture. So you guys, this is Infusionsoft. Has anyone heard or used Infusionsoft? A couple people? All right. So I used to be certified. I'm no longer certified. I actually use a competitive product now. I'll show you in a minute. Active Campaign is the name of it. So yeah, this is what it looks like once you've got the email address, how you nurture them through to get a result out of them. And so just various systems. This is the one I use now, Active Campaign, but Infusionsoft is good. Some of these others, these are pretty expensive. Marketo, Eloqua, Pardot is a Salesforce company, I believe.
How are the landing pages through Active Campaign?
So they don't actually, or they might offer, I don't use their landing pages. So I actually make my own. I use something called Optimized Press, which is it's a WordPress plugin that lets you wire it up. I use Zapier as a connector, and then Optimized Press funnels into Zapier, which funnels into Active Campaign too. Okay, and then the other side of this is retargeting. The remarketing, retargeting, those terms are interchangeable, but these are the services I use for that. It's a great way to rekindle conversations that died if they never became active, they never bought your product. That whole concept of 360 messaging, you not only want to hit them through email, but you also want to hit them as they go to the New York Times or as they go to whatever websites they go to. Facebook custom audiences, through installing a little bit of JavaScript on your site, you can also then market to these folks on Facebook. So something to be aware of. It takes 5 minutes to set up, and then it's something you should do up front. This is a service we use to do the mailers, the actual physical mailers. Buffer is super useful if you're doing social media in terms of you can queue up a bunch of content. People say, how do you run a business and then also do social media? Like, how do you have the time to do all that? Well, the secret that they're not telling you is that they queue all this stuff up 15 minutes on Monday morning. You go in and you queue your posts for the week, and then over the course of that week, they're dripping out to your Facebook and your Google Plus and your Twitter and all these things. And you never think about it. It's just about one 15-minute window a week when you actually have to worry about it. VC Buckets, this is an interesting service. It lets you be that Amazon. It lets you actually serve dynamic content based on the browsing habits of your visitors. So pretty useful.
Has remarketing replaced the term for retargeting?
I see them used interchangeably. I don't know that one, I think they're kind of, I don't know what is the right term at this point. I say retargeting, I think maybe most people say remarketing, yes.
On the social media, just to take a step back on that, Buffer, how is that different from Hootsuite, or is it similar? Is there something better? I mean, is it better than Hootsuite in different ways, or?
I've used both, and I've found, and I still use Hootsuite to do immediate tweets, but I use Buffer to queue stuff, and I don't remember why I did that.
Hootsuite, you can queue.
Yeah, and I think it was because Hootsuite can't do Google Plus profiles or pages. It's one or the other, where Buffer can support that. I believe that was the thing that made me do that. But very similar functions. Okay, any more questions on that?
Will you change your mind now that G Plus is going away?
Is it going away?
Yeah, they're parsing it out.
Okay, interesting. I don't know. I haven't fixated too much. Like at one point they said G Plus was everything SEO. Like if you weren't on G Plus, then you're killing yourself. And I kind of never bought into that. So
yeah, they made an announcement a couple weeks ago that they're going to start piecing it out and getting rid of it. So
okay.
It is going away within the next 6 months.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. Trying to keep up with what SEO, like, there's only so many hours in the day, right? So I typically look to smarter people than myself, and I haven't heard anyone saying, oh, you got to be on Google Plus. So that's probably the reason why. All right. Okay, so as far as converting sales, you guys, like, sales is its own discipline, and I'll just give you my favorite books on this subject. Like, I have read a ton of books on sales, and this is my favorite one by far. And it's actually the first version of it. I didn't like the second version of this. So solution selling, he has this whole, it's kind of like the SPIN framework, but it's his whole approach for doing consultative sales, and I got so much value out of this book. This guy, Skip Miller, his whole thing is about controlling the process, which if you're using marketing automation, then we're, by nature, we're controlling that funnel flow. So his thing is like, you want to, to the extent you can, you want to control how people move through your sales process. And then Oren Klaff, pitch anything. If what you do involves pitching people, this is the best framework I've seen for doing pitches. Right, and so that's really, I mean, sales is its own thing. There's no way to kind of I don't know, I haven't seen like sales apps that blew me away. So that's the sales knowledge that I would convey. Deliver and satisfy, you guys. This is all about how do we blow people's socks off? How do we exceed their expectations when they sign up with us as a customer? When they sign up, like a lot of people think, oh, great, we made the sale, we're done. No, that's like the beginning, right? Like if you think of it like that is, okay, great, we got them to that point, now where can we take them? So be thinking things like, welcome training videos that you can just throw out there that they weren't expecting. Satisfaction surveys that you then do something about. Not just like the kind of vanity metrics like, oh, who are we getting? But like ask them questions where you'll then trigger different responses based on how they fill them out. You can fire off a welcome voicemail. Like how interesting would that be if you have a business that, that's personal and then suddenly you get like a message from the owner. Like Jermaine does something where he actually recorded the first, like the most common 200 first names, and that actually addresses like 80% of the people that he has. And so they get a voicemail just like, whoa, where does this voicemail come from? It's like, hey, this is Jermaine. Like, hey, Sean, thanks for signing up. I can't wait to meet you. Like, super stoked about your, so things like that.
Does it always just go straight to a voicemail? They can't possibly pick it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Baked goods. You guys, this sounds ridiculous, but like this service will actually send like brownies out to people. Like, think about like automated, like rewarding your top 20% of your customers with some kind of like pie the next day. Like how ridiculous and awesome would that be? It's like skywriting "I love you" over their house. Of course, I'm joking about this, but like this is, but this is the mentality, right? This is what you want to be thinking. What can we do that's the equivalent of skywriting "I love you" over their house or their business? Right? So earlier, MailChimp. We're talking about MailChimp. So I have, this is where I'll throw this. So I have 2 of these shirts that they sent me. These shirts probably cost them together, what, $8 or $9? I don't know what their cost is on this. I have worn these shirts at least once a week for probably the last 4 years. They have gotten so much damn advertising out of me. Not to mention, like, it's such a conversation starter. It looks like Curious George. Most people will say, oh, Curious George, I love that book. I said, well, it's not like Curious George is this company MailChimp, we use them, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just, like, fanning out, awareness of this company. A brilliant, brilliant marketing move on their part. So get creative. Think about what are the things you can do to just absolutely blow people away. And how are we doing time-wise?
Kind of about 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah, and then open up Q&A.
Okay, all right, so I'm actually just going to scream through this last part. This is talking about upsell, downsell, cross-sell. You guys, obviously the most popular one, you want fries with that, I'm going to supersize it. This is a great book and website, 80/20, Perry Marshall. This talks about these kind of these profit centers that nobody thinks about at the ends of the tail. So the high end and the low end, the upsells and downsells. For an awesome example of what I think is the best downsell I've ever seen, you should sign up for an Audible account and you should cancel. And it's amazing. They have one of the best processes I've ever seen. They take so I went through. I knew I wanted to cancel my subscription. It says, do you want to double your credits for the next 6 months? I said no. Do you want to get half off for the next 6 months? I said no. Do you want us to just suspend your billing for the next 2 months? I said nope. I want to cancel. And then they said, okay, tell you what. We'll suspend billing. We won't bill you anymore. We'll give you a free book as long as you don't terminate your account. I said, okay, fine.
I've never used Vista Print. They just hammer you away as your more.
Oh, yeah.
That's a
kind of hard not to.
salvage downsell, right? They're masters at not losing you. And so think, like, it was that hard to get this person to this point as a customer. So this is like, of course, let's spend the energy to then not lose them at that point.
Sirius has a similar approach.
Serious, the radio?
Yeah, you can get it for like $6 a month.
If you keep saying no. Just keep-
Yeah. So the trouble is when we talk, and they're, right? Okay, this is a cross sell. I mean, I bought some archery lighted arrow knocks, and then they got Amazon geniuses that they are. They're sort of thinking, oh, well, this guy's probably a hunter, so let's show him hunting stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Referrals. I just wanted to. I'll just blow through all this stuff because I know we don't have much time. The one that I did want to mention, like this is a little matrix, and again, you guys, I'll give you the slides, so if you really want to go through, you can see how all these break down. But I just didn't want to call out. Joey is actually was my Krav Maga instructor. I took self-defense from him. He does this probably better than anyone I've seen in terms of fanning viral content out there. So he'll do like a hostage workshop with his students and then take video of it. And you'll get specific, he'll focus on certain students and then like build a custom video for that student that shows how badass they are in this workshop. and then make it so they can easily post that to their Facebook. And he gets clients that way, right? So that's a genius way of doing that. Another thing with his band, he does a photo booth where he'll take photos with the fans and then put that and tag them on Facebook. So these are, just get creative, think how you can do stuff that then radiates out. And by the way, if you want to take self-defense, he's awesome. He's local. He's arguably one of the best Krav Maga instructors in the world. All right, so I guess probably close to out of time. If not, do we want to do questions, or we want to go through the rest of this, or what?
Just two questions.
Keep going. Questions? All right. Well, I will take that. Just hammer me with questions if you got. All right, so super quickly, airlocks. Philosophy of this is very simple. So anybody use outsourced labor at all? Or are you guys all in-house? A couple people? Okay. So we use it because business is spiky. You can't, to handle those bursts, it doesn't make sense to hire a full-time employee and then dismiss that employee, right? So you need to be able to handle the burstable spikes. The way you best do that, think about like, why does a submarine have airlocks in it? And I'll just ask you that question. Why do they have airlocks in submarines? So it doesn't sink. Why? If this compartment floods, right, it doesn't infect the rest of the sub, right? Same concept here with airlocks. So the way that we structure our code, we use something called Manage WP. It's a WordPress site. It allows me to clone the site and then give that to a contractor. Let them work remotely over here. They can't break the live site, and they can incorporate their changes back into our site. That alone isn't the key to the thing, though. When you hire someone, I'll just put these up here so you can read them. When you hire someone, rather than award the project to a random contractor that you haven't yet worked with, and then kind of do this crapshoot. Like, this is the process usually when you work with someone. You take the site, you award it to the contractor, you give them a week, give them a stack of money, and either you get a good outcome or you get a bad outcome. And you don't know until that point how good this person is. So that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to take your site, to clone it 4 times, to find 4 contractors, and give them an hour each, right? Pay them their hourly rate, whatever that is, but you only give them an hour, and then you do a pretest and see how far they get. Say, this is the spec, this is what I want to develop. We record a video. We say, I'll speak instructions, I'll say what we're going for, and say, this is the goal, get as far as you can in an hour, and we'll see what you did. Pick the person who made it the furthest, and that's your guy. Award the contractor or your girl. Award the contract to that person, and now you have the only true way to know how good that person actually is to work with them. Well, let's limit the scope with how we work with people to start. That, in a nutshell, that's airlocks. I mean, you need to have a bulletproof way of how you partition the site and clone it and reincorporate it. But once you have that, you've got all the ingredients to do it. And this is that Manage WP service we use and love. Okay, and then the last thing, this is the they do, we do technique that I mentioned. So I'm just going to give you the process that we use. This is the actual brainstorm that we used in coming up with our automation framework for how we handle webinars when we do them. So we came up, we said, we got 3 columns. We do, they do, if not. This means we do something. We advertise a webinar. They, meaning the visitors at large, RSVP to that webinar. If not, we're going to retarget them or remarket to them. Right? Next line of that. So now they come back here. So we are going to send them login instructions and remind them to attend the webinar. So they attend the webinar, or they don't. And we send them an email that says, hey, sorry, we missed you. Let's invite you to reschedule. From that, we'll send them, after the webinar, they've attended it. So now we're going to send them their quote or invite them to a consultation. They're going to either schedule the consult or not, same thing. And you can kind of read this how the flow goes. So this is the conceptual sketch of that process. Does that make sense in terms of a process? Okay. So then, this is where people fall down. It's like, how do I translate this into reality? So let me show you the exact way you do this.
Can I ask you
So this is the actual flow in Infusionsoft that we use to implement that process.
quick question?
Yeah.
The last one down in the bottom of that previous page was nag.
Sure.
How does that turn people off if you tend to nag?
Nag is my shorthand for let's remind them to take advantage of the offer before it expires. I just say nag. I call them nag emails, but I mean, obviously you don't want to nag people. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, that's my shorthand. This, like I'm saying, this is the actual brainstorm that we use to make our process for follow-up. Okay, so this is the actual thing implemented in Infusionsoft. This is what it looked like. But how we got here, like people say, well, how did you get to that point from the conceptual sketch? I'm going to show you this. So it's very simple. This column right here that they do translates one-to-one into goals in Infusionsoft. The people that use Infusionsoft, have you seen this before?
Yeah.
Brad Martineau teaches this. He's actually the one who developed this. This is a genius way to do it. This column, the we do, translates exactly into the follow-up sequences that follow those goals. And then the if not, like contingency column, is these little fall-off catch-alls, if we missed them or if they didn't show up or whatever. It's one-to-one mapping. It's no more difficult than that. And once you understand this process, there's nothing stopping you. So. All right, cool. I will just give you this last thing here. If you want the slides, like I said, you can text OCMA talk, one word, OCMA talk to that number. It'll send you all the slides. It'll also give you this other stuff. So that MP3 audio of Jermaine's podcast episode you should check out. Does anyone use WordPress in here? What about Gravity Forms? Do you guys use that? So we wrote this plugin, which if you do any kind of lead generation using Gravity Forms, it's awesome. It lets you track the lead sources automatically, and if they don't sign up on the first page or even the first visit, it still captures those lead sources as a cookie. And then also this includes my top 20 all-time posts for entrepreneurs. I have a blog. I think there's almost 1 million visitors at this point. So it's like the top 20 posts from that. So, cool. Questions?
Question about the, going back to the marketing automation workflows.
Yep.
Our company just bought HubSpot recently, and we're struggling a little bit with determining the best practices for creating those workflows. Do you know of any resources that we should check out to kind of help us get started?
HubSpot has a pretty extensive university of their own, right? Like, I've not gone through it, but I understand that they have a really good set of workshops that you can take for free, and it kind of gets you up to speed on using their stuff.
Okay.
So I'm not actually versed on HubSpot. I would love to use it. It's just a really expensive product.
Okay.
But people that use it love it. So I would look at their university, the materials that they themselves offer.
So what are you doing when you're scrolling in on Dubs?
Oh, that's just my blog. It's kind of, for some reason, this became my handle a long time ago. So this is my personal blog. It's me on Twitter. It's just scrolling on Dubs. I'm not doing anything. It's just kind of my personal profile, I guess, on social media. Yeah.
How did you automate this? Like send the text and
yeah, so this is an example of the 360-degree messaging in practice, right? And it's using that active campaign, if you remember that one. It's built in. It has an SMS function.
Awesome. How
Yeah.
you got your slides?
Yeah, right. Right. This enables that impulse buy. It lets me move the conversation to a different medium, right? So it's 360 messaging.
What service is it?
Active campaign. It's all like if you get the slides, it's all linked. Everything's in here.
It's amazing that it sent, I made a typo in the first email and said this is invalid
Right.
right away.
Yeah, no, it's pretty sophisticated.
Does anybody else have any questions for Sean? Let's give a big round of applause. And a reminder, Sean will be here if you want to pick his brain for a little while.
Yeah.
And hopefully help him with some referrals since he didn't pay out of his own pockets to come here today. Let's give him one more hand. And stay as long as you want, and thank you. See you next month.